Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to introduce our guest to you, but before I do, there are some people I want to thank that we always thank. We want to thank brassandwinds.com. At the Willow School, we teach trombone and we teach saxophone. And when we need instruments, Brass and Winds are who we call first. We think they'll help you as well. Brassandwinds.com, a Quinn the Eskimo company. We are Truer MU, and that's what you're watching now, the Truer MU channel, the truth about music. We talk to musicians and we try to go a little deeper. And today I want to introduce my guest to you. When some of you may follow me and know that I wrote a symphony, and I got kind of cocky and I thought, well, now that I know how to write for the orchestra, maybe I should start advertising myself to score for films. And I put it out there that I was looking to do this. And my friend Adam Cohen from Oberlin from a long time ago jumped in and said, hey, I know the business. Let me tell you what you're getting into. And I was so interested in what he said that I said, well, I've got to have him on my channel. So let me tell you a little bit about Adam here. He is a composer who has scored the TV series Psych, Crumbs, Andy Barker PI, Dilbert, Kath and Kim, and an assortment of bumpers, intros, and promos for NBC and others. He wrote the music for The Muppets Wizard of Oz, one of the songs from there, netting an Emmy nomination. I'm so pleased to introduce to you Adam Cohen. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So we've known each other for many years, although we haven't spoken in a long time. Why don't you tell folks, and you can tell me also, how did you get, let's just go back to the beginning. What was your early interest in music, and was it related to what you ended up doing for a living?
Listen, before we start, I have a metaphorical question. Since you're
Oh,
Adam,
yeah.
and you're Adam and I'm Adam, does that make us a molecule right now?
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, we could spend hours answering that question.
Yeah, just wondering.
How about you answer my question?
Yeah, okay, good. How did I get started?
Yeah. Like when you were younger, when you were little, did you think, hey, I want to write that music? Or were you just kind of following your bliss and eventually found your way to it?
Well, I mean, two major things happened. One was that my father had a reel-to-reel audio tape player, and he had Walter Carlos at the time switched on Bach.
Uh-huh.
And so probably when I was about 4 or 5, I became obsessed with the sound of the synthesizer. The Moog, certainly. I didn't even know what that was, but I became so obsessed that I begged any chance we could get to go to any store that carried synthesizers, and became obsessed with trying them, playing them, wanting to hear them. And the second thing that happened was I got seriously interested in computers at a very young age. So I loved the technology. So those two things kind of were always percolating. And then when I was 7, like probably everybody else in our age category out in Hollywood, caught Star Wars for the first time, and I'll never forget the opening 20th Century Fox fanfare with Star Wars music. It was so mind-blowing to me. I remember it so well that I actually didn't pay attention to the opening crawl, and I remember being completely confused. I mean, I guess that almost happens anyway in that movie if you don't know what you're getting into, but I hadn't paid attention, and I was so captivated by it. I think that was the first time I was like, oh, I really love that. And then certainly I saw probably Star Wars 20 times and had an audio tape and listened to it, and always was blown away by the music and how the music helped tell the story. And that was kind of the beginning process of always loving to integrate story and music. And then, but I was always doing piano and classical piano, and that's when I met you at Oberlin. I was actually classical piano and physics, and figured out pretty quickly that physics was not going to work for me. And followed that, went on to Juilliard, studied more music, more piano, and kind of reached a point when it dawned on me that I wasn't going to have the kind of career in my head that I wanted to have as a pianist.
Yeah.
And since I'd always quietly wanted to do music for film. And during this whole time through high school and college, I had synthesizers. I started collecting some synthesizers. I think that was, my parents helped me get my first one, a Yamaha DX7, which I was so disappointed about because all you could make were silly FM sounds, and I desperately wanted the Moog sound. I had no idea those were two different things at the time. I probably spent 2 months trying to create the Moog sound on a DX7.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I succeeded, but I came as close as I possibly could in my head.
But what a good activity to do to try to create a sound like that.
Oh, totally, totally. Well, a good activity. I actually got to the point where I thought, oh, synthesizers can't do what they can do, and I guess there are different kinds. That's when I began to realize it. So
Yeah.
I left. I decided that piano wasn't the only thing, and I really wanted to try writing music for film. I loved, even as a pianist, always created stories in my head, and always had this idea that the music was all about telling a story, whether it was a literal one or even just in my head. And in fact, I always made up stories in my head about pieces of music I played, always.
Oh,
For me to help figure out what I was telling. So
yeah.
marrying those two seemed kind of obvious, and I kind of decided it was time to give it a try while I was in New York City, and thus became the next step. But that was how I got into it.
Okay, so now you have a desire. You've decided the piano career. Now you were a marvelous piano player. So I just want everybody to know, as a pianist, you were top notch. It wasn't as if you couldn't have done it, but you made a decision that, that wasn't the way you were going to go. And so how did you end up breaking in?
It's funny. It's so accidental, and there's so much luck involved. Which now, when I talk to anybody about doing this career, or frankly any career, that you doesn't matter how talented you are, luck is such a huge component. And really, the talent that's necessary is more about the talent of maximizing your luck and acting on your luck and making luck happen for you, or at least pushing luck to happen for you. And ironically, I didn't know that at the time, but um, I called a professor up at NYU who ran a film scoring program, and luckily he had gone to Juilliard, so he had felt like, oh, it's okay, you're not a NYU student. I'll see what I can do, because usually they don't let anyone who's not an NY student in. So he let me into the class. I started composing, and instantly realized that my rig, in order to do it, was not good enough. It was a little bit of it's a dangerous circle. It's like you need the sounds, you need the equipment to do the job, but you can't get that stuff until you have the job. So where do you start? And thus became the I need to do some research. So I was desperate to find good orchestral sounds, and discovered at the time there was only one set of orchestral sounds worth using that sounded really good. They were ridiculously, prohibitively expensive and required a huge onslaught of computer hardware to run, mostly synth hardware, sample hardware. And that investment was so large that I wasn't in a position or ready to do it. And yet I knew that if I didn't do it, I would never get an opportunity. So normally at the time, I used to traipse down to Musicians Row. I think it was 47th Street, where Manny's Music and Sam Ash Music was. It's where all the Brill Brothers building was. I think all the songwriting, and I used to go in and try all their stuff and try all their sounds. These orchestral sounds you could not try. You had to buy them on faith, and it was
Oh,
such a big investment. I said no way. So I called the company up and said, "Hey, I want to do this. I don't know how I can afford this. I need to try it to know that it's worth an investment. I need to know that they're the real deal, because I can't afford. Once you buy these things, you can't return them. There's no returning. It's a license." So they said, "Well, there's a guy on the in Hell's Kitchen who uses these sounds, and we had kind of a deal with him. You give him a call, and he'll probably let you in." So I gave him a call and said, "Hey, can I come down and check out your rig?" And told him what the story was. He said, "Sure." And I went down, sat down next to him. He was working on orchestral mock-ups of The Hunchback of Notre Dame for Disney, and it sounded, or no, yes, and it sounded so real, especially at the time. Now it wouldn't sound nearly as good, but back then it was. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was like, "Oh my God, it's a real orchestra coming out of a machine." And two things happened. One was I looked at him and said, "Hey, can I come back tomorrow and just sit?" Because I sat there for about 3 hours. He said, "Sure." I called that night. I went and called the company, and I said, how can I do this? I took a loan out from my family, and I started putting it all together. And then I went day in and day out. So the luck thing was, the man I was sitting next to, he, as it turned out, two things. One was he was working on these really amazing, at the time, Disney games, and having to mock up all the sounds with a fake orchestra. And the second thing was he was also working and business partners with a composer named Stephen Schwartz, who was a big Broadway composer, who I had known as a kid. Like, Godspell was my all-time favorite record when I was like, along with Switched on Bach. That was one of my other ones. So
yeah, yeah.
um, and so my process of telling Martin hey, can I keep coming back? Can I keep coming back? Next thing you know, I'm coming back every day, and uh, next thing, Steven Schwartz needs help on stuff, so I'm helping him out, and I'm showing Martin, hey, look what I can do. I got my system set up. I just said, hey, can I try? I'm going to try to make stuff like you do. Can I show you? And he listened to it. He's like, oh, this is great. And next thing you know, it was good enough that he said, hey, can you help me? I'm so busy. I need help on some things. And so next thing you know, he's hiring me to help him out. I mean, this didn't happen in 3 days, but it happened pretty quick. And if I hadn't just said, hey, can I come by? And if I hadn't said, hey, can I come sit? And if I hadn't said, hey, will you listen and check this out? And I got my first jobs from Martin, quite honestly.
That's cool. So yeah, there's a certain amount of bravery involved, and maybe a little bit of smelling the wind and knowing which direction to go.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Well, and it's just, I mean, I say it to everybody, no matter what you do, no matter where you are in your life and your career, it is putting yourself in that uncomfortable position of pulling strings, pushing your luck. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing will happen is somebody will say no. And that's really it. They might even snap at you and say, don't bother me again. But so what?
Well, hold on now. I want to be careful because I've pushed my luck too far and wrecked my reputation a couple times. There is that danger, isn't there?
I mean, I don't know what you're referring to, and I'm sure that might be the
I'm
case.
not going to tell you.
Well, you should. I mean,
Well, let's just say,
quid pro quo.
I got myself into a couple of situations that I wasn't ready for. And as a result, I was, blackballed. I was like, okay, this guy's trouble. And, I wrecked my opportunities for the future because I was in the wrong place. I was in the right place at the wrong time. So
Fair.
that's my story.
Look, that's fair. I mean, because that's part of maximizing your luck is trying to understand that. But at the end of the day, I mean, the number of times I've been asked, hey, can you do this? And I think there's no way in hell I know how to do that. And I say, yes. Then I go off in a panic and go, how the hell am I supposed to do that? But I always go back to that Ghostbusters scene in the movie, in the very end when their goes are, or whatever that god goes, are you a god? And Dan Aykroyd says no, and then all this craziness happens, and then the other Ghostbusters character says, look, if someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. And
that's right. Ernie Hudson's best line.
The truth is, Adam, maybe you're right about being careful when you pull these strings and think about the timing. But sometimes there's no way to know that. And sometimes it's you take the risk, and yeah, things don't always work out, for sure. You pull on strings and they don't always pull back, for sure. But if you don't pull the strings and you sit around waiting for people to pull your strings, it won't happen. I've made some big string pull. I had strings dangling in front of me, and I just didn't even think of pulling them, or just pulled them incorrectly or not hard enough.
Yeah.
So, and boy, we're talking like big opportunities. So, and I to this day kick myself for it.
Do you want to share any of those, or are they too embarrassing?
They're not embarrassing. No, in fact, one of the things I helped Steven Schwartz out on was he was having to get demos together for his songs for the movie Prince of Egypt, and he was working back and forth with Hans Zimmer, who was big back then, but not anything like even now. That was it's like a whole other level, and I didn't deal directly with Hans at all. But when I finally made the move out to LA, Steven said, "Hey, you should meet Hans. He's great. You should totally meet him." And I did follow up on that, and I made the phone call, and Hans invited me over because of Steven, and I had a 2-hour hangout with him. It was incredible. It was in his room. I'm looking at his, amazing, patch-based synthesizer and just everything. I think it's a different room now, and I couldn't get over. I couldn't get over where I was and what I was doing and the conversation we had. And at the very end, he said goodbye, and he said, "Look, I'm going to be out of town for 2 or 3 weeks, but we should talk when I get back." Now, what I heard is from the classical conservatory world is, you don't tend to poke people like you were concerned about. And so I heard is in 2 or 3 weeks, he'd get in touch with me, and that I don't want to bother him because he's Hans Zimmer and who am I? And of course, by the time, and now I know as I'm older now with everything going on, he probably totally forgot about me. And wasn't thinking, and nor does he in a position where he's like, oh, I'm going to help out that Adam kid. But if I had called him and responded, it might have, who knows what would have happened. Maybe nothing. I'm not saying Hans was going to offer me anything. Maybe he was just being nice, and I just assumed that, and then nothing happened. So that was number one. Number two was I had an opportunity. I knew that when I was first starting out here, I knew that James Newton Howard, who's absolutely one of my favorite composers, was looking for a new assistant and helper and stuff like that. And I knew, I was told through a very good friend of his, who was another big composer, who suggested I should call him. And I just didn't, because I was just, for whatever reason, I didn't want to be pushy. Now, now if I look back, I would tell myself, are you kidding? You call that guy. If somebody asks you're a god, you tell him you're a god. I would have pulled, in worst case, he would have just said, I would have come in, he would have met with me, and he might have said, you know what, you're not the right guy for this. And that would have sucked. But you can't have success without risking failure. And I feel that the conservatory world is really good at making you afraid of that, unfortunately.
What a great point. Okay, I want to back up just a little bit, and I want to ask you something about your conservatory experience that I skipped, just because I'm curious. You won, I believe, the concerto competition at Oberlin and got the opportunity to perform a concerto. Which one was it?
The Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto.
Correct. And I remember going to that performance and everybody was so impressed and it was great. And you told me that playing that concerto put you in therapy. Does this have anything to do with that risk aversion you were talking about?
Yeah, well, that's not the only thing that put me in therapy, but no. Honestly, what I mean is that at that time I had worked so hard to learn that piece, and there's this expectation that you play perfectly, and I had some pretty big mistakes that maybe only I knew, or I'm sure some people knew, but you could probably add up all the notes, and let's say there are 50,000 notes in that piece. I probably messed up a good 100 of them, and I had some little slips and little memory glitch here or there. I listen to it now, I'm like, oh my God, what was I so upset about? But I was so devastated because I hadn't played perfectly, and I had let everyone down. I had let everyone like you and the audience down. I let my family down. I had let, my teacher down because I had not played perfectly. I let myself down. I let the orchestra down, and all my friends who also had competed to play and who weren't selected as pianists, especially the pianists. I felt like, how embarrassing. Boy, how embarrassing. Now I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, what fucking drug was I taking? And how narcissistic of me, and what a waste of time. What a waste of energy and time that I couldn't have enjoyed. Really, now I look back on as one of the best musical experiences of my life. Because it was. But I wasn't able to enjoy it the way that I wish I had.
I'm glad I asked the question because it better illustrates the change in your outlook that you've had over the last 25 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. The change of outlook. Yeah.
Yeah. From a sense that everything's got to be perfect or you can't move forward, to a sense that nothing's ever going to be perfect and you should just go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, ironically, if you have that approach, you actually do so much better. You may not ever play perfectly, but you do so much better. When you remove that I need to be perfect out of the equation, then you're able to do better. And I think I think it's really destructive, and I think it's a little bit of the nature of, unfortunately, the classical world. So that and then I brought that with me to the film scoring world, because I sit there and I'm writing a commercial for Kellogg's, and I'm sitting there going, every note sucks. It's so stupid. And at the end of the day, it's a Kellogg's commercial. It needs to be great, but I'm not trying to be Mozart. I don't need to be Mozart, but I'm sitting there going, well, I know what Mozart did, and what I did sucks. Well, stupid. How dumb is that?
I love this. This is terrific. Well,
let's talk. Terrific, or is it dumb, or is it not dumb? You have to agree with me, right, Adam?
No, I don't have to agree with you, and I'm going to challenge you if I don't, because it's more fun that way.
That's a rhetorical. Like, you would agree with me that that's a kind of a really backwards approach of being an artist, about being of this perfection, and that only perfect is good enough.
I'm glad you asked me that, because it's, I think there's got to be a certain tension there. Certainly you don't want to go into something thinking that what you're doing doesn't matter. There's got to be a floor above which you're standing, which is a professionalism, of course. And then at the end of the day, of course, you can't expect perfection of yourself, because in any case, what is that? It's changing. Depends on who's listening. So you can't really achieve perfection, even if you wanted to.
That's true. That's a good point. But also, then the concept of perfection sometimes is a comparison of yourself to others, whether they're people who lived in the past, whether they're geniuses now, and you sit there and go, "Well, I'm not them," and of course you're not them. You're Adam Cole. I'm Adam Cohen, and I'm never going to be John Williams. I don't pretend to be. There was a time when I wish I could, and I sit and listen to his music and go, "How the hell?" How the hell does he write that? Where does all that come from? Or you listen to Mahler. How did one person conceive of all of that crap? And it works, and it's so perfect. And where did that come from? And you want to berate yourself because you're not that. And yet at the same time, it's like, so what? I don't berate myself that I don't write like Shakespeare. I don't give a shit. I can barely, write a letter, or an email.
But that's the difference, because you're so much closer to Mahler than you are to Shakespeare. And so there's that feeling that if you just push just a little more, you just might get there.
Well, right, but the danger is about the self comparison is so bad for your own abilities. For my own abilities, like it's not you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about me. So it's for my own abilities. If I sit there and go, I messed up those notes in the Tchaikovsky concerto, and everyone else could have done it perfectly. I suck. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, what a way! And stupid is okay. That's harsh, but in a way, I'm mad at myself because it's a waste of time and energy. I'm never going to be Ivo Pogorelic or Martha Argerich, the great pianists. But so what? I'm Adam Cohen. They're them, and I'm me. And I want to embrace. I'm not you. I'm embracing me. I can't play jazz. I don't have any clue. I wish I could, but that's. Do I berate myself that I can't play jazz? No, I shouldn't. In fact, if anything, I should go and play some jazz. Give it a try. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll teach you how.
What?
We'll teach you how.
Seriously. Seriously.
Okay, so I'm just so intrigued by this line of questioning that I got to go a little further. The desire to be John Williams, it definitely pulls you along. I mean, I didn't write that symphony I wrote. It took me 25 years of studying before I felt like I could, before the last 2 years came along and I could start doing it. It pulled me along and made me want to learn and made me want to get better. So there's something to be said for that, isn't there?
Yes. I think it's worth striving to be great. But it's so funny. I just had this conversation earlier today. I think it's worth striving to be great, but berating yourself is not the answer in my book, and I think in anybody's book. I mean, I have kids now. I watch them, punish themselves if they don't score a certain thing on their test. I see them work really hard, and then they don't get a great grade that they think is good enough, and I'm like, you worked hard, you tried, you studied, you learned. I said, that's what's important. You get a number that sucks, but that's not what you're about. That's not what this is about. And you may have friends who studied half as hard and got twice as good as you, but that's them. That's not you. And what you struggle with is good is your thing. And trust me, they're struggling with stuff that you have no clue about. We all do. I mean, there is a good reason that the majority of these great composers, had terrible relationships. They had no family life. They could barely handle it because all they could do was think about music. So pick your poison, as far as I'm concerned. I used to watch like some of these movies that I'd see and go, oh my God, I want to do that. It's so good. Wow, that would be such a challenge. And now I'm a little bit like, thank God I don't have to do that. What a stressful nightmare. I'm glad somebody else got to do it. I mean, because I got to do other stuff that I'm kind of happy about.
So this is my takeaway, and I really like this. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah. Oh,
The idea is if you berate yourself, there's an underlying expectation that if you just berate yourself enough, you can get perfect enough that people will like you and give you the opportunities. That's the misconception. And the actual conception is the opportunities don't come from you berating yourself and perfecting yourself. They come from you taking chances and doing your best and being you.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I have to bring up because it falls. I've been talking about this with one of my sons, and this movie. It's so funny because I'm not a big fan of these movies, but I don't know if you know the movie Whiplash.
Oh yeah, I love that film.
Right. So, I mean, it's very interesting because actually, I know the gentleman who did all the jazz band stuff. I've used him as an orchestrator. He's not the composer, and I know the drummer, even though I'm not supposed to. Let's leave it at that. Um, and and the movie I always found try. I'm not a big fan of this guy's movies. I thought LA. I hated LA Story, whatever it was, and the astronaut movie he did. I just find it they're so self something about his storytelling just doesn't jive with me. Whiplash, even so, when I first saw that movie, I found it was so overwrought and overdone, and the bad guy, the band instructor who's berating the kid all the time. I thought there was a realism in that happens, but the way it happens in the real world is so much less off the over the top and so much more subversive and quiet and subtle and more damaging. It's worse actually because of that. And so it's funny. So I was showing it to my son, and I was watching it, and I had a totally different take this time because I thought it was so trite and overblown and Hollywoodized. This time I watched it, and I watched the main character, a young guy, desperately wanting to be a great jazz drummer. And I watched the teacher, desperate that all his students are great musicians on one hand, but on the other hand, he goes about by berating everybody to death and is mean and brutal and awful. And it's an uncomfortable movie. And that the clash of those two things, instead of looking at it as external, I realized, oh my God, that's what not only I have, I think we all have that in our head. We have the student who desperately wants to be great and strives to be great, and we have this voice in our head that yells and screams like, God, you suck. You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. And that voice believes in itself. It believes it's doing good. And I just like the teacher in the movie was believing he was doing good. At the end, it's incredibly damaging. Mm-hmm. And I think the movie's really wonderful in a way because the kid kind of overcomes that and says, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do. And at the end, they kind of reach a partnership that's a little tenuous.
Okay, so here's my take on that ending, and I think it's an important piece to add here. Yes, they come to an agreement when the kid overcomes his fear of the teacher and does what he wants to do. But what that unfortunately does is it reinforces the idea that the teacher was right. Basically, the student validates the teacher's approach, unfortunately. And
it's interesting. You can read. That's fascinating because I totally get your point, but I actually think that it doesn't validate it. It just means that okay. I see why you say it validates it.
Right.
But it comes at a huge cost.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the cost.
So taking a step back, it shows that while it may work, it comes at a huge cost. And
right.
Somebody like you and I and anybody listening can go back and look at it and go, really, is it worth it to have that approach? If that's an internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, then is it really worth listening to that guy? Because it doesn't. I don't think it works. I just don't think it works. It works to a point, but at such a cost. So is that cost worth it? And if we all look at the reality that we have this Fletcher teacher in our head yelling and screaming at us, do we listen to it? And how much do we listen to it? And how much importance do we give it? Do we give it the importance that some of us do by becomes the teacher, or do we squash him down and go, okay? To me, I have that Fletcher in my head, and I remember it used to be so loud that every note I wrote sucked, and every Tchaikovsky performance sucked. Now, sometimes it rears its head, and I go, oh, it's okay. Just go back to sleep. It's like, I'm busy. I don't have time right now for you. And I think learning how to maintain and manage that, which is what I saw the ending happen, is another takeaway. That we all have to fight to find a way to supersede that teacher's, that kind of voice in our head. Anyway, so that to me is the same.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the business of scoring now. Tell me what your day's like.
my day. Well, I mean, when as a scorer.
Oh no! Yeah, tell me just ordinarily what your day. I'm just curious.
Well, I mean,
do you walk the dog?
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunately. I think you and I had a little bit of talk about this. I mean, unfortunately, Hollywood, I think for most people, but not everybody, is a very it's either rains, it's a deluge or it's a drought. And when there is work, it's the expectation is you have ridiculous amounts to do in an unfathomable short amount of time, and there is no care of what that means for you as an artist, or as literally as an artist, and for you as a person in terms of even your health, your physical and mental health. And of course, the better your physical and mental health is, the better writer you are. And so it all goes hand in hand. And so the days are wrought with, oh my God, I have a huge amount of music to write, and it better be done. Because if it's not done, you're not going to get hired. And it better be, I mean, it better be good enough, but it also just better be done, because, you can write great music and write only half. Oh, look at this amazing, the most brilliant music ever, and it's only half of what I need done. Give me an extra time, and they'll be like, sorry. So there is a constant pressure of like, I want it to be great. I also have to get it done. And the expectations are stressful. And so the timing, sometimes it's you're working, you get up as early as possible, and sometimes it's 2 or 3 in the morning, and you go to bed and you got to get up again the next day and keep doing it. And it's exhausting. It's great it's much more feasible when you're 20 or 30, which is my age. and
Mine too.
Yeah, exactly. I knew we were a molecule. I mean, it's interesting because there is the real possibility of a huge Hollywood strike right now. That's somewhat in the news, but it's very prevalent here. And it is this idea that it's not these crazy hours everywhere, across all the boards, whether you're a makeup artist, a lighting person, cameraman, a boom operator, mic operator. I mean, it's just the hours and expectations are way past what is okay. And that's because Hollywood wants the bottom line. They want as big a product as cheaply as possible. And of course, who doesn't? But it's at the expense of everyone. And I think finally there's a sense of like, hey, this isn't okay. So the days are pretty much that. If one decides to get into this business, be prepared to have a very crazy roller coaster ride. 1 minute nothing, the next minute so much, and you have to be willing to sacrifice almost your whole life. It is a all or nothing kind of proposition. So and even for and the more accomplished you get, the more opportunities you have, and you want to hold on to as many of those opportunities. So next thing you know, you have people working for you, and everybody's busy running around like crazy trying to get everything done and done well. It's not. I remember I had some people in my life right after I started going, hey, how is it selling out to the corporate world? And I used to get really pissed at them and feeling like, hey, look, I'm not selling out. I'm choosing to do something different with my life, and I'm using everything everyone's taught me that I gained in the classical world. I'm bringing over here, and I was right to feel that way. Now the way I see it, they're right, is the selling out really is that the expectations of being an artist are dictated by a bunch of people who aren't artists, by the bottom line that this has to get done. Money, it's costing money. We don't. Yes, you would like 2 extra weeks to write your music, but that would mean we'd have to pay 2 or 3 people a little bit of money to stay on board. So we're not going to do that because we want to save the money. Oh, really? We could get that song for $50,000? Oh, let's do that. So they'll spend the money, but they don't want to spend the money. They just don't feel like it's as important, as getting a Who song or the Beatles or whatever. So
right, yeah, this is a typical corporate approach to an artistic business. It's been around as long as. Well, let's talk about the history of the business. I want to know how this business has changed, for instance, since the 1950s, which is probably the image most people have of film scoring, and then how it's changed since you got in.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there in the 1950s.
Right. But I'm saying, first of all, it had changed from the time, you heard that Star Wars theme to the time you got in. And I want to know how it had changed. And then while you've been in the business, it's changed too. I'm curious about both of those changes.
I mean, I think the biggest change is the technology. I mean, certainly when I first came to LA, I've been here, 23 years. I mean, I was kind of on the forefront at the time of like the technology. And I saw other people who'd been here a while who were super talented, not comfortable with the technology and not able to do the work. and I think that that is still happening and will always happen. So while now I'm the older person, and while I'm way up on my technology, I do hear a new sound, a very like conglomerate sound of hybrid sound of like orchestral sounds and synth sounds, and people are programming and coming up with these unusual synth sounds and mixing it with rock and roll in a way that rock and roll is not the popular styles and genres in a way that hasn't been done before, and that requires a kind of computer savviness and a technological savviness that I haven't kept up with, and it's not my style. And in another 20 years, something else will be, and those people who are now are going to be a little bit like, oh my god, I can't keep up. So if you look back to the 1950s, people were didn't have the technology. They had, we have computers and we have video that syncs perfectly. Back then they had streamers, and they had to project the film, and they had stopwatches and go, okay, you have this 30 feet of film, you have X number of seconds at this speed, you have to write something that covers this scene in 20 seconds before the cut happens. And I've seen video of John Williams, I think to this day, when he scores, still uses a stopwatch. He still has a clock. He has a great sense of that because that's what's worked with him. I don't need that. I don't have that, and people still hire him, but I think that most people, that's a problem. And certainly the industry doesn't want to spend the money on a live orchestra. So, if you're John Williams, you get what you want because he's well established and done so much interesting stuff. But people from his generation aren't going to do well right now because nobody pays for a real orchestra. They figure everybody can do it on their computer, and now you've got people doing DJing, and that's a whole other type of, you go to a concert, you don't have to hear people play, just watch some people spin and mix some records and kind of mix some beats and drop a beat. And I mean, I don't, I don't know how to do it. I don't do it. I look at that and go, really? Okay.
So you may be the wrong person to ask this question then too. If you wanted to get into the business today, what would you need to know and what would you need to own?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I'll say this: anytime, whether it's 20 years previous, 20 years from now, or today, you need to be diversified. Learn as much as possible. Learn the computers, learn the software, play with different sounds, get up on the technology. Don't just learn to use one digital audio workstation like Logic. Learn how to use Digital Performer. You learn how to use Pro Tools. Learn how to use Ableton Live. And I mean, there are other ones probably that I don't even know. The more you know, the better, because think of them as tools, and those enable you to do things for yourself. But it also means that if you happen to give a call to, somebody like I did, and you sit down next to them and they're doing something amazing, I went out and got the tools because I realized I can tell them, hey, I could do that. But when I was looking at the Disney stuff, but I needed the sounds and I needed the equipment, and I needed them in front of me in order to show him I could do it. So those tools, learn the tools, learn as much as possible, learn every style of music. No style of music is not worth learning. Because it all informs you, So yeah, I mean, I wish as a classical musician, I had been playing every style of music. I wish I had been improvising. I wish I had studied jazz. I wish I'd studied pop. I wish I'd been learning how to songwrite, learning how to improvise, all that stuff. I don't need to just play Beethoven. It would make me a better pianist, quite honestly, right? So do everything, learn everything, play every instrument. Get great at every instrument, because you never know what will happen when you're like, you decide you sit down next to that person and they look at you and say, oh my God, I need this song that sounds like, a 1970s funk disco thing. And next thing you know, you go, hey, let me try. And, you can play guitar. So you know how to figure that out. You bring a singer in. Oh, I have some drum set. I'll just quickly lay a beat down. And next thing you know, you've done it,
Just like that. Wow.
Well, it's not, but that
sounds easy.
Well, no, but that's my point. I mean, and you shouldn't stop that ever. Like, be proactive. If you love it, don't limit yourself. Limiting yourself is listening to that Fletcher guy in your head saying you're not good enough. study that stuff, try it. You don't write a symphony. Why shouldn't you write a symphony? I mean, I've never written a symphony. I'm like, wow, you've written a symphony. That's really cool. I mean, that's not an easy feat for anybody. No matter what it sounds like, no matter what it is, that's a huge accomplishment. And I bet you learned so much from that process. So by doing that, so take a violin lesson. Next thing you know how to bow a lot better than somebody like me who's never taken a violin lesson. Well, I did Suzuki when I was in kindergarten, but that doesn't count.
No, it counts. It counts.
Well, I mean, yeah, I may know about 50 versions of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with different rhythms. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's the basics of bowing there, right there for you.
Well,
So,
fair. Well,
yeah.
I went over my head.
So to talk about what you're proudest of. Talk about some of the things you've scored or worked on that you're really proud of.
Oh gosh. All right, that's a good question. I mean, we did. I mean, well, I've worked on Psych for 8 seasons, and I just actually finished not 2 weeks ago another movie. So there's another for any people out there who are psychos who love Psych. There's another movie coming out. I don't know when, but we're done. It's all been handed in. But when we did an episode that the show is, I always liken. I don't know. Have you seen the show, Adam, at all?
No, I haven't.
Well, I mean, why are we having this talk? Go watch it and get back to me.
I'll be right
No,
back.
no. So I always liken. So Psych is a funny thing because when I started the show, nobody knew of it. It was on the USA Network, and it was one of those things. It's a Ferris Bueller. To me, it's the Ferris Bueller's Day Off character. Pretends to be a psychic even though he's not. He gets away with murder. And murdered not literally, but he just gets away with everything. His best friend's Dule Hill's a neurotic pharmaceutical sales rep, and they open up a little detective agency, and they solve murders, and it's like Scooby Doo murders. So it's Scooby Doo meets Ferris Bueller, with some little relationship stuff in it. And the creator is also obsessed with 1980s stuff. So there's homages everywhere to everything, and we've homaged. I mean, almost every episode is a murder at a Telemundo show, a murder at I mean, we did Twin Peaks. We've done everything. One of the coolest ones we did was a Hitchcock episode, and that require I remember knowing that was coming up, and my goal instantly without even seeing it was, I have to score this like a Bernard Herrmann, like Hitchcock scored it. And then to top it off, when they first handed it to me, they said, well, since we're owned by since this TV show is owned by Universal and run by Universal, we actually have access to all the Bernard Herrmann music from the movies.
Oh, wow.
From Vertigo. So we're going to start we want to use it. So So that was one of the most difficult episodes I've ever scored, but it was one of the most fulfilling because it really pushed me to push myself with a fake orchestra. How can I make this sound as close as possible to Bernard Herrmann score? And it was like scoring a Hitchcock movie, even though it was a silly TV show. I took it as that. I'm like, I'm going to score a real dark thriller, which is actually kind of what it was. And the second part of that story was because they had access to the real music, they wanted to use a lot of it. And we got into a little bit of a battle especially in one important scene, because we can use the music to Psycho, and the Psycho music told a story that was the Psycho story in a very specific moment. And it followed this character going up these stairs, and he's creeping around, and we don't know what's going to happen to him in that movie. In the Psych movie, there's a character going up the stairs, and the main character is watching it all on video, and he's trapped. And as he's watching it, he realizes, oh my God, this guy going up the stairs, I thought he was the bad guy, but now I'm realizing this is a scene from Psycho. I remember Psycho, and he's going to get killed, like the main guy in Psycho. So the Psycho music, which was great for Psycho, doesn't tell that story. It tells a very different story. And thus came a huge battle of they wanted that music. No, that's not what's going to do it. You got to let me rescore it. And it was even on the mix stage when we were looking at it, I had to push really hard. But my challenge then was, all right, I've got to make it sound like it was from Psycho.
Oh, that's fascinating.
But it's got to tell it's got to sound like a psycho, but it's got to tell and follow the main character, realizing, having all of a sudden this realizing, oh my God, this guy's in trouble. He's not the bad guy. He's actually about to lose it. So between that and I would say working on the musical that we did, which was an immense challenge. We did a huge musical. It was Murder in a Musical, so we actually wrote a musical, and that was a manner of creating songs that we weren't trying to create the typical musical. It was still a Psych musical. It's tongue in cheek, and none of the actors are great singers, nor should they be. And so it was just how do we, I had to teach them, we had to write it, and that was a huge, and that we got to use a real orchestra. That was a big push. I'm like, look, we're gonna do this. We need a real orchestra, and getting on stage with a real, I think we had about 70 piece orchestra. We recorded at Warner Brothers stage. I had Bruce Botnick record it, who not only recorded E.T. and The Lion King and all of Jerry Goldsmith's stuff, but he was the producer of The Doors. So he's this massive history behind him, and amazing guy, an amazing person just to have around, and great ears and an amazing musical mind. And we had 3 hours to record over 35 minutes of music. So it was a mad dash of craziness, but that was one of the best exciting, anytime I get to record an orchestra, which is very few and far between, I've done it. Is exciting, but that was, some of the best players in the world are up there sight reading and going, okay, great, that sounds great, next, all right, great, that's great. I don't care, there's a wrong note, I don't care, next, you don't have time.
Right. To our point from earlier, right?
Yeah. And so then going back to the Hitchcock was such a great achievement. I felt so proud of it. And what was funny was it got submitted for the Emmys, and I didn't know. I didn't remember. I think I actually helped pick that one that season. And I remember, I'll never forget my phone ringing at 5:30 in the morning and thinking, oh my God, something's happened to my parents. That's what I thought. And I answered the phone, and it was my agent, and it was out of the fucking movies. She's like, Adam. I'm like, what? Adam, it's Maria. You got an Emmy nomination, and I was like, I lost it. I mean, I literally lost it. And then I did lose it because the guy from 24, Sean Callery, won the actual Emmy, but whatever.
But you got nominated for something else as well, right? The Wizard of Oz song?
One of the Muppet songs, yeah.
I did hear that. I really liked it.
Yeah. Go watch the Hitchcock one.
Well, I tried. I want to tell you, I did try to watch some Psych clips, but all the clips I had no music in them. So I was just out of luck.
That's weird because there's so much music. I'll you and I have to talk later. I'll try to tell you a couple ones to see and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I can maybe help the audience find them. All right. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I can come. I mean, there was I mean, look, I'm just going to go on other things. I can think of other things that really hit home. There was a commercial that for Disney and Kellogg's that I was working actually on another commercial for this ad agency. And the guy I was working on it, he came to me and he said, oh my God, I have this other commercial that there's no dialogue except at the very end. It needs a score. Here it is. And you know what? We haven't gotten it. We're really unhappy. And if we have anything, we need it by tomorrow morning. So I literally stayed up all night and I wrote this spot. And I have to say, and he came in and it was like a total, one of those home runs. And so it just made me really happy. I loved working on it because it was literally just images and sound and no dialogue, which is very rare. And then there was a budget, and I hired a small ensemble, and I had a big tuba solo because there's an elephant, and you always have a tuba solo when there's an elephant.
Of course.
And so I recorded 2 days later. They're like they loved it, they bought it, they need to get it done. So I bring in all these string players into my little studio, and then I brought in this guy who contracted it, brought in a tuba player, and this big guy came with this big tuba, and he sat down, and I have to tell you, it was the simplest part, and he played it. So he was done in literally 2 minutes. He played it through once, it was perfect. I had him play it 3 more times. It was all perfect and beautiful. It was so sweet. He was the nicest guy, and he left, and David, the contractor, the two who played cello on it, said, Adam, you know who that was, don't you? And I said, no. And he goes, I think if I say his name right, I think it's Tom. That was Tommy Thompson, who was the tuba player that Tubby the Tuba was written for, which
Oh my,
happened
wow.
to be, by the way, my favorite thing when I was a kid. That music story. And he goes, and he's played on like every movie. He's the tuba player on Jaws and Close Encounters. And I was like, no.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, but all that, that crazy stuff at the end when the dialogue and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that
yeah.
low stuff. I mean, and of course in Jaws there's tuba stuff all through it, and you just realize like this guy, and no wonder. I mean, he played. It was so instantly obvious this guy was an amazing musician, and so I have to say that was. I didn't know he was the greatest, nicest guy, but when he left, I was like, and when I found out, it just added to like, oh my god, I just got to work with like this luminary, and I wish I had said something. I wish I had known because I would have just probably given him a big hug and said, "Tubby the Tube was my favorite record, next to Switched on Bach and what was the other one?
Godspell.
Godspell." Yeah. Anyway,
The list grows. Well,
yeah.
okay. So at this point, I'm sure there are a few people who are the right kind of people who are just chomping at the bit to go try their hand at this, and that's great. We have talked earlier about the hazards of the job and how stressful it can be on your life. How can, of course, some of these people are young, and they can spend 20 hours a day on stuff, and it's not going to cost them anything. But when you get older and you have relationships, it's very dangerous to have to continue a life like this, especially if your livelihood depends on it. Can you advise these young people on how to maintain and preserve their life in the face of a job like this?
I mean, I don't. I mean, it will depend on what projects you work on, who you work for. Some people respect and honor that, and some people because they come from the creative bent of things, and other people, they don't care. I mean, there's a great. You should look this up, and I show this when I've given talks and I've given some classes on film scoring. There's a great video, probably I think it was on Funny But Die, but called Whoosh, WHOOSH, and it's about a sound editor who's trying to do sound effects for a commercial and working with a producer, and it is kind of the quintessential unfortunate experience that a lot of people have. So I love, everybody should go watch it. It's super funny, but it's like, wow, that's kind of the way it is. And I mean, the best thing I can advise is that unfortunately this is a life. It's a great experience, and there's a lot of great. I would say it's worth doing. And if you can find that balance, if you can figure out a way to etch out a life that is separate from this, and put those boundaries down carefully, not really with the producers, but with yourself. I mean, I have a good friend who's very successful, and I don't really know what it's really like for him, but I've talked with him, especially back in the day as he was really, when he was really starting out and become his first big successes. And he just said, look, I go in at, 9 o'clock and I'm done at 5. I'm done. But I don't think he's made sure he doesn't listen to the Fletchers in his head. He's not brave. He gets done, and he's a very prolific writer. He knows how to write. He's amazing at what he does, and out it comes. And I think that is a talent, and that's not to be under appreciated. Like, in fact, that is part of the reason he's so successful, because not only is he capable of doing that, but then he's capable of having a life. And he's like, I'm not willing to give up. I mean, this is my outer perception of him, but I'm not willing to give that up just for the sake of this. And I think there's something to be admired. And we used to joke, we were, it's been I haven't talked to him in a while, but yeah, not for any bad reason, but I remember him used to saying, I think it's really good I didn't go to all those music schools, because boy, the baggage you take out of them, and then I think sometimes he's like, I wish I had been that much more learned and stuff, but I mean, he's an amazing composer. So what can I say? I mean, he's no Mozart, but then none of us are. So no.
Well,
So yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
I was just to kind of put the punctuation on that. I think it's worth doing it. It's just worth making sure you don't sell your soul, and I mean that literally. Like you need to have a life, and and it's tricky because sometimes you have to hustle and go crazy in order to get the work, and then all of a sudden you get the work, and then you're inundated. You've got to keep it, and you can't let them feel like you can't. And surround yourself with other people. Don't make it a one. I think I made a mistake of keeping this a one man show, and I think in order to be successful, because that's the way I am. I want to do my thing. I'm an artist, whatever, all that crock. But at the end of the day, you're gonna need a team. Get to know a lot of people, and then when you have opportunity and falls in your lap, get those people to help you, and have a team so that you can have a life. That would be the best. Have kids, have a family if you choose to travel, see the world. Make sure you find time for that if you can. It's not easy.
Adam Cohen, thank you so much for this conversation. It's much better than I even thought it would be.
I'm glad laughing. I'm like, God, I hope so. I'm glad. No, Adam, it's great. It's great talking to you. And as I've said to you briefly, I'm just always impressed, what little I see about you and what you're doing and on Facebook and through our conversations here and there. It's just, I really admire how hard you've, from my perspective, pushed yourself to do these things. Like, I'm going to do these things. I want to be a jazz player. I want to write a symphony. I want to be, a pianist. That's not a little thing. And I think that's what the whole point of what I tell any aspiring person, no matter what you do, is that's having that desire and ability and follow through is huge, because that's the only way you can achieve what you want, is to give it a risk. And worst case, you happen, you fall on your face, or you get a no, or a door slammed on you, you pull a string, and whatever, who cares? Next. So right. It was great talking to you, and anyway, we'd have to keep in touch.
I appreciate it.
Some psych stuff. I'll have to recommend some things for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have anything you want to share with the audience, what I'll do is I can put a few links down in the description. So thank you again for talking with us. And I want to thank also our audience. As always, we love you. Thank you for listening and watching these videos. We know that some of these videos, it's a long watch, and we think they're valuable, and we appreciate it. If you like them, please like them, let people know, share them, and subscribe to our channel. And if you have questions, you can reach me at adam@willowschoolga.com, and you can find us at www.truermu.com. Thanks, everyone. Check out our next interview. You can check our playlists to see who we've got coming up for you. I'm pretty excited about our interviews coming up, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.